Good morning, church. Just a couple of things we want to mention as we start. I appreciate Bill reminding us about next Sunday evening at 5:30 at the Madison Church of Christ. There will be a thanks singing. And a couple of important announcements about that. Number one, there will not be a meeting here at 5 o'clock next Sunday. There will be no worship here at our building next Sunday night. We're encouraging everyone to go to Madison. Secondly, if you're not wanting to drive, I know it gets dark at like 2 o'clock now. So if you're not wanting to drive, we do have our shuttles. If you are interested in going in the shuttle so that you don't have to drive, there is a sign-up sheet that is out in the foyer. I'd ask that you go ahead and get signed up on that. If we run out of space on the shuttle, we have a couple of other options of how to get people there. But don't let the fact that you don't want to have to drive yourself keep you from being a part of it. We certainly want everyone to be able to come and participate that's interested in participating. So those are the important things pertaining to Sunday itself. And then let me also mention that we will not be meeting next Wednesday. There'll be no gathering here at the building next Wednesday. And by next Wednesday, I mean not this upcoming Wednesday, but the following one. When I use the word, sometimes people use that word next differently. When I would say this if it was this week, but next meaning the one next week, we will not have a gathering on the Wednesday before Thanksgiving. So just wanted to remind everybody about those important things. We do have the men's retreat that we're really excited about coming up this weekend. It's starting on the 22nd, going through the 24th. We have some guys that are just coming up Friday, some that are just coming Friday and Saturday, some Saturday only. There's all kinds. If you want to be able to come up to men's retreat and you want to be able to ride up with somebody, you can call me and let me know. I'll let you know who's going at the days and times that you want to be able to go up so you don't have to go by yourself. But I do want to encourage all of our men here at our congregation, regardless of your age, to make time to be a part of this. Even if you can't make it for the whole weekend, if you don't want to have to bunk up with somebody else, if you want to just come out Saturday, have a delicious breakfast, have some time of fellowship, have an opportunity to hear from some fantastic speakers and me, then I want to encourage you to come out this weekend. I know that you'll be blessed by the time that you come out and the opportunity we have to share and encouraging each other. If you haven't signed up yet, but you know it sounds like a really good opportunity you want to be a part of, it's not too late. So we do have information about the retreat. It's on the church app. I think there's still some flyers in the foyer. So if you want to sign up and have an opportunity to come, I certainly want to encourage you to come out and be a part of that this upcoming weekend. The last thing I'm going to mention is here in several weeks, looking at New Year's, the second or third holiday that we look forward to, we want to consider the fact that Madison is hosting again another singing, but it's going to include the group a cappella. The men's a cappella group will be there. And there is information if you want to go on our Facebook page for you to sign up if you want to participate in that. So those are some upcoming things that are going on here with our congregation. I want to make you aware of and to have you keep in mind, especially this weekend, we have several opportunities to be able to be encouraged and uplifted. So we're thankful for that. We're also thankful that we had a great gathering here that Tim hosted, and I heard that there were some delicious baked potatoes and other things that people were able to enjoy in a time of fellowship, so we're thankful for that as well. If you have your Bible with you this morning, I would ask that you would turn to Isaiah chapter 25. We'll begin by reading several verses from Isaiah 25, and we'll come back to this. But these are some significant words, I think, that are recorded in the book of Isaiah. Isaiah chapter 25, beginning in verse 6. I want to read this for you this morning. On this mountain, the Lord of hosts will make for all peoples a feast of rich food and a feast of well-aged wine, of rich food full of marrow and of aged wine well refined. And he will swallow up on this mountain the covering that is cast over all peoples, the veil that is spread over all nations. He will swallow up death forever, and the Lord God will wipe away tears from all faces. And the reproach of his people he will take away from all of the earth, for the Lord has spoken. It will be said on that day, behold, this is our God. We have waited for him that he might save us. This is the Lord, and we have waited for him. Let us be glad and rejoice in his salvation. Powerful words from Isaiah, hopeful words from Isaiah about who God is, about what God is going to do, and about our response as the people of God on that great day. I want us to have these words in our minds as we consider several things this morning. We're going to look at a parable, and we'll come back to Isaiah chapter 25, but I want us to look at a parable from one of the Gospels and to have in our minds the idea of waiting and being ready. Waiting and being ready. There was a significant day, I guess, in some people's minds that happened back in 2008. It was a big day. It was going to be on July 11th, 2008. But in anticipation of this incredible, amazing day that apparently was going to change the world, on July 4th of 2008 on Fifth Avenue in New York City, there started to assemble a group of people. So that's July 4th, a group of people start to assemble, and they're coming together in anticipation of July 11th, 2008. And as they assembled there, they camped themselves in that place on Fifth Avenue, and they waited 1 day, 2 days, 3 days, 4, 5 days, 6 days, 7 days more. No, I'm just kidding. 7 days. 7 days they waited. How many of you could tell me what happened on July 11, 2008 on 5th Avenue in New York City? I would venture to say nobody. I'm just guessing. I wouldn't unless I knew what it was ahead of time, right? But I want you to think about this in your mind. What thing would cause you to wait outside for 7 days in a line? What thing could possibly make you wait 7 days outside in the elements, in the weather, no padded pew, no air conditioning, no heat, just outside for 7 days, that you would spend 7 days of your life that you couldn't get back waiting for something? Tell me what it is. I mean, what is it that you would possibly wait for that long? Let me tell you this. I was trying to think about what's the thing I've waited longest for, and there's several things that came to mind, but the most specific waiting I remember, or I could remember, was waiting for Ayla to be born. And I remember it because her getting delivered was so hard on me. You know what I mean? It was a difficult thing for me, okay? And I remember on a Tuesday, it was the middle of peak season at UPS, and I was working there, and if you don't know anything about that business and Christmas time, they don't love Christmas time there. It's everybody work your tail off all the time, and just, it's craziness. And I had to tell my boss on a Tuesday in the middle of peak season, my wife is having a baby, I have to go to the hospital, I got to bring her to the hospital, she needs to get checked. And so we went and got checked, and we thought we were just going for a checkup maybe, and then I was going to come back that day, but it turns out they said, no, we got to check you in, you got to stay. So I called my boss and I said, listen, it looks like it's going to happen. We're having a baby. We're excited. Oh, that's great, man. See you tomorrow, right? And and it turned out we didn't just wait 1 day, but we had to wait 6 days. And 6 days waiting for, when they tell you you're going to have the baby today, 6 days becomes a long time. You know what I mean? It was hard on me. Are you with me? It was difficult for me, okay? Waiting this 6 days, but even for something that amazing and that incredible, it's like after 6 days, it's like, well, is it gonna happen or what? What's going on, right? And thankfully, she was born on a Monday morning, a little after 1 o'clock in the morning. And I say thankfully because the Texans were playing the Patriots that Sunday night, and I got to finish watching the whole game, so that was important. So back to the idea of waiting. What would you wait 7 days for? What could possibly be so valuable, so important that you would wait that long? Well, apparently in 2008, the iPhone 3G was coming out on July 11th. And somebody said, listen, it is so important for me to make sure I'm one of the first ones to have this phone, which, by the way, I don't think anybody in here has one of those anymore, right? I mean, it's run its course at this point. It was so important that they went out 7 days ahead of time and camped on the street for 7 days to wait for this phone to come out so they could be the first ones in line. What does it take for us to be willing to wait for something? What does it take in order for us to have a willingness to be ready for something, to sacrifice for something? I want you to go to the Gospel of Matthew quickly. And we're going to be in Matthew chapter 25. Keep things kind of simple. But in Matthew chapter 25, we have this parable that Jesus gives, and it has to do with waiting, and it has to do with being ready. And in this parable, Jesus is using a scenario that would be very familiar to the people of his day, in the same way that marriage ceremonies in our day and our time follow a very similar traditional trajectory in terms of having a rehearsal and a rehearsal dinner and having a wedding day and a reception and all of those kinds of things. It's very familiar ground to us. And so Jesus, as he's speaking in chapter 25, this is a really important chapter in Jesus' ministry, partially because immediately following chapter 25 and going into 26, we see the plot to kill Jesus is unfolding. Things are rapidly moving towards his demise on the cross. And so Jesus is really trying to step things up in a way, I think, towards his disciples to prepare them for what's coming. And in chapter 25, he gives 3 really powerful images of the need for them to be ready and the need for them to be willing to wait. And the first of these 3 images that Jesus presents them with in chapter 25 begins in verse 1. And he says this, "Then the kingdom of heaven will be like 10 virgins who took their lamps and went to meet the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 of them were wise." Well, this tradition may not be as familiar to us as ours are when it comes to weddings, but typically what would happen is there would be a bride and a groom, and the groom would meet with his, let's call him groomsmen, that's what we're kind of familiar with, his wedding party, and he and his party would go to the bride's house where they would have the ceremony, and he would meet her there, and they would have their ceremony, and then the bride, or the groom and his groomsmen would bring the bride and her party back to his house, and they would have a celebration. Think of it in terms of they would meet there for the wedding ceremony at the bride's, and they would go back to the groom's for the reception. That's probably some language we're pretty familiar with. And as a part of this process, as Jesus is describing it, this typically took place at nighttime, and he's describing these ones who were waiting for the bridegroom. 5 of them were foolish, and 5 of them were wise, Jesus says in verse 3, "For when the foolish took their lamps, they took no oil with them, but the wise took flasks of oil for their lamps." Now, again, there's some things we want to see as we're looking at this. All of those who are waiting knew well enough, they knew enough to have a lamp ready. And they knew enough not only to have a lamp ready, but we would assume that they knew enough that those lamps would require oil. Okay? That those lamps would require oil. But as you're thinking through this and as you're reading through this, the idea of waiting and being ready, the idea of what does it take for me to be ready, to be willing to wait for something? I want to say these couple of things for us this morning. Number one, we have to be interested enough for us to be willing to wait and for us to be willing to prepare ourselves for something. We have to be interested enough. As we see in this story here, they're all interested in being a part of what's going to take place. They're interested enough to have a lamp. They're interested enough to at least look the part of being prepared for this bridegroom to come and bring them home. But it's altogether different to be someone who's interested enough to appear prepared, but it's altogether something different to be someone who's intentional, who's ready, not just waiting, but ready. There's a difference. Let me say it this way. There's a difference between waiting for something and anticipating something. When we're anticipating something, to me it implies a preparation for that thing. Not just a waiting, but a preparation. If you're going to go live on a sidewalk for 7 days to wait for a new phone to come out, you got to do some preparation ahead of time. If you're going to be ready for the things that will happen from the time that you begin to the time that you finish, there's got to be some preparation to take place. And that's what we see lacking as Jesus lays out what happens and the difference between the wise and the foolish. The foolish, it says, take no oil with them at all. But the wise took flasks of oil with their lamps. One of the interesting things that they told us when we went to the hospital, they said that you have to bring a car seat with you so you can take your baby home. And I thought, and they must have told us that like 10 times. And I'm like, well, what else do you think we're going to do when we show, like, well, we're here, but we didn't bring anything to bring the baby home. We just thought we'd leave her here with you guys and you could have her for a while, you know? Like, but now, do you have a car seat? Are you sure? Do you really? I'm like, yeah, man, we got to. But you know what? Sometimes people were showing up. They'd done the waiting, but they're not ready when the baby gets there, right? And so this is important, not just to be interested, but to be interested enough to be prepared. So he says the wise brought flasks multiple of oil with their lamps. And as the bridegroom was delayed, I want you to hear this in verse 5. As the bridegroom was delayed, they all, it says, not just the foolish, but the wise, all of them became drowsy and slept. Now, some of us might want to jump to judgment when we read that and say, man, these wise ones that are waiting for the bridegroom, they should have been wide awake. They shouldn't have slept at all. But it's interesting to me that they do sleep and that there's no condemnation for them sleeping, because even though they were sleeping, it was a restful sleep of knowing they were what? Ready. There's a difference. There's a difference in sleeping when you know you're ready. I don't know about you, but I think we're all a little bit different when it comes to planning and taking trips. Some of us, and we're not going to name names or raise hands or do any of that, all right? We're not doing, the Marriage Retreat is coming up. We'll do that closer to that, right? But some of us are those who, we get up maybe 3 hours before we have to leave on a 2-week cruise and pack our bag, right? And then there are those of us who, about a week ahead of time, we're starting to get everything organized, alphabetized, categorically put together. We're not just going to bring 2 changes of clothes and plan on washing them every 3rd day or 2nd day or however that would work out, right? But we're going to have enough. And then what if I fell into a mud puddle? I need 3 extra outfits for that, right? I mean, there's different kinds of preparation. It's a different kind of sleep when you know that you're ready. And so they're sleeping, but they are prepared. So when the call comes, it says in verse 6, at midnight there was a cry, here is the bridegroom, come out and meet him. All of those who had all of those virgins rose and trimmed their lamps. And the foolish said to the wise, give us some of your oil, for our lamps are going out. But the wise answered, saying, since there will not be enough for us and for you, go rather to the dealers and buy for yourselves. The expectation of those who had not prepared themselves, who were not living in a way to be ready, was that someone else would be able to be the stopgap for them. Someone else would be able to come in. If they didn't have enough, somebody else would be able to fill for them what was necessary. But that's why Jesus calls them foolish. And as they're going out, the Bible goes on, verse 10, as they were going out to buy, to get the oil that they needed, they had waited until it was too late and then decided, now we're interested. Now we want to be ready. Now we see that the bridegroom certainly was coming. Now we see that we shouldn't have just had a lamp, but we should have had oil. Now we see that we shouldn't have just been interested, but we should have been intentional in being ready. Now we will go and get our oil. But as Jesus lays out, he says it was too late. And when they finally make it to the marriage feast, the door was shut, and afterward the other virgins came also, saying, Lord, Lord, open to us. But he answered, truly I say to you, I do not know you. Watch therefore, for you know neither the day or the hour. All of these examples, all of these images Jesus uses in Matthew chapter 25 have a very critical ending to them, in that there's a distinction between those who are ready and those who are not. And as he closes with his final image of the judgment and the sheep and the goats, he makes it clear that there is going to be a judgment between those who are ready, intentional, purposeful, and living their life for God, and those who are not. And if we go back quickly to Isaiah 25, and we look at this scene that's described, it's such a beautiful picture that Isaiah paints of who God is, of what God is going to do. If we truly believe that what Isaiah is laying out here in Isaiah chapter 25 is what's going to come to pass, and I believe we should, because we don't just find this picture in Isaiah 25, we find this picture in Revelation chapter 21, very similar, that God is going to wipe away the tears from the eyes, and on that day there will be a new day that God is going to create. In Revelation chapter 7, he talks about this same image. These same pictures are brought out of Isaiah chapter 25 and brought to us in the New Testament. Death being put to an end for all time, the final enemy to be defeated, is how Paul describes it in 1 Corinthians chapter 15, that death is the final enemy to be eliminated. by Jesus Christ. This is what's being described in Isaiah chapter 25 and verses 6 through 9. And here's just a question I want to leave to resonate with you, that I want to leave to marinate in my mind, is if I truly believe what's being talked about here in Isaiah 25, if I truly believe in what Jesus was teaching in Matthew 25, if I truly believe in the revelation that was given to John, that Jesus is coming back, that God is going to do things on that day, that there is a feast that has been prepared for those who are of the house of God. There is the marriage feast of the Lamb, that Jesus is coming to get his bride and to bring her to be home with him and to live with him forever. If I truly believe that, then how will my life look differently today? If I truly believe that, what are the ways in which I'm intentionally preparing myself every day? How am I living my life in such a way that shows I'm in anticipation, I'm waiting on God? Let me read this again. For Isaiah 25, beginning in verse 6, on this mountain, the Lord of hosts will make for all peoples a feast of rich food and a feast of well-aged wine. Not just food and drink, but the best, right? Of food, rich food full of marrow, and of aged wine well refined. And he will swallow up on this mountain the covering that is cast on who, church? The covering that is cast on all peoples. And the veil that is spread over all nations. There are a lot of things that are different about different cultures and ethnicities and societies in our world, but there is a covering and a veil that goes over all peoples and all nations. There is one thing across all of life on this earth, all of humanity, no matter the language you speak, no matter the time zone that you live in, the veil and the covering we all live under is death is not something that we can escape. And so here's Isaiah saying, here's God saying, there's a covering over all peoples, a veil over all nations, but God is going to swallow up death forever. And the Lord God will wipe away all tears from all faces, and the reproach of his people he will take away from the earth, for the Lord has spoken. On that day, as Jesus would describe it in the latter part of Matthew chapter 25, on that day he will separate the sheep from the goats. On that day, he will look for those who have been wise and prepared for his coming, who believed in his word when he said he was coming. On that day, he will see those who he has given the talents, who he has given the 5 talents to, and those who he has given the 1, and what they have done with those things. On that day, God will see those who have prepared and those who have waited faithfully. Here's how he closes out. I'll leave it here with you this morning. Verse 9, it will be said on that day, and may these be our words, church, behold, this is our God. And we have what? Waited. We have waited for him. And he's worth the wait. Amen, church? We have waited for him that he might save us. This is the Lord, and we have waited for him. Let us be glad and rejoice in his salvation. We're certainly thankful to God for all that he has done for us, but first and foremost as Christians, we're thankful for Jesus Christ. We're thankful for his willingness to leave behind the glory of heaven. We're thankful for his willingness to leave behind all the honor that was rightfully due to him in his place seated beside his Father. He's willing to leave those things behind and become flesh just like us. That he was willing to live among us, to deal with the weaknesses and the brokenness of these human bodies, that he was willing to walk on this earth and live a life where he was going to deal with persecutions and afflictions, where he was going to deal with suffering and mocking, where he was going to deal with people questioning his goodness, that he came and he walked and he lived that life perfectly in order that he could offer himself as a sacrifice on our behalf, that his blood might become our covering and our hope to be forgiven of our sinfulness. And so what he calls us to do is to come unto him for forgiveness, to come unto him for salvation. For us to be willing to walk the difficult steps that we might die to ourselves and be raised into new life in Jesus Christ, clothed no longer with the garments of this world or the garments of our sin, but clothed in the white robes that can only be afforded to us by the blood of Jesus Christ. He's waiting on us. He's waiting on you. Are you willing to come to Him? Won't you come as we stand and sing together? Thank you for joining us for our online worship this week. We're so thankful to have had an opportunity to spend time with you. We hope that our time together has been encouraging for you and for your family. If there's any additional information that you need, the church office phone number and website have been provided below. Please feel free to contact us. And we look forward to having opportunities to reach out to you and worship with you in the future. May God bless you and your family in the days and weeks to come.